And this is David Duke, and this is the David Duke Internet Web Radio broadcast. I watched the opening of the Olympic Games in Beijing. It was amazing, but not just for its heroic scale and artistic beauty. It was amazing because it was an unabashed celebration of Chinese history, culture, heritage, and indeed the Chinese people themselves in their own rich and unique identity. The camera panned out across the Olympic field, and thousands of Chinese danced and performed and sang and celebrated their, well, dare I say it, Chineseness. That's a new word and a tough one to say. Among the tens of thousands of performers, I could not discern any European faces and did not detect even one black face anywhere on the field. Every performer was Chinese. Everyone with the distinctive Asian fold in the corners of their eyes. China to the Chinese means a lot more than simply the collection of races or peoples that live in the geographical area of China. It means to them the Chinese people as much as the political boundaries of China. And this, the most populous nation on earth with 1.3 billion, is practically all Chinese. Hong Kong, even when it was independent, was considered a Chinese city. The Chinese have a clear understanding of what China is: a nation of Chinese with Chinese identity, history, culture, tradition, and character. And, dare I say it, the genetic underpinning of it all, the unique character of their DNA that gives them both their appearance and their underlying nature. The Chinese, free from the overwhelming media propaganda that pervades the Western world, and free from the minority group that controls the media and influences Western governments, they know that if non-Chinese elements migrate or breed their way to dominance in some provinces, that it will lead to conflict and unrest, even eventually to terrorism and civil war. That's why, even though there are some border areas of China where people are of different ethnic origin, the government has consciously promoted massive Chinese immigration into those areas. That's precisely what's going on right now in Tibet. Obviously, massive Chinese immigration into Tibet will be catastrophic for the Tibetan people and for their unique heritage, religion, culture, and freedom. For when another group or groups with their own will to power become a majority in a country, the indigenous people will be controlled by them. That's obvious. That's Demographics 101. The Chinese are interested fundamentally in what's good for their own people, and so are the Tibetan people. All that is normal for most of the world, but of course not normal in the European world, where those who dominate the media and government lead us to destruction. I think the Tibetan people and the Tibetan nation should survive. And I also think the Chinese people have that right too. All people have that right. The question in Tibet is whether the Chinese have to wipe out Tibet to survive. And I think the answer to that question is no. And in relations of nations, there are many economic and other policies that can be used to help encourage nations to respect the rights of others. And I think we should use those influences to help the Tibetans maintain and survive in their culture and their heritage. It is true the Olympic Games have many people present from all corners of the world. It's about peoples and nations competing together in a spirit of fairness and friendship. But it is not a celebration of the homogeneity of mankind, but its diversity. It's a diversity that obviously exists because of long ethnic separations that created it in the first place. Race itself is created by geographic separation over thousands of years. Evolution is only possible not just on the level of the individual, but also on the level of the gene pool. every bit of mankind's progress on the evolutionary scale came about in a defined and specific population that multiplied and thrived. The Olympic flag bearer for the United States at this Olympics is Lopez Lomong, an immigrant from Africa. For the last 2,000 years, up until just 40 years ago, almost any cultural function in Europe, whether a performance, mass concert, or fair, a sporting event, or political rally, would have been an all-European version of the opening ceremonies of the Chinese Olympics. In America, although there was a small minority of Africans and even smaller minority of Mexicans and Asians, each group had its own expressions. America was deemed a white nation. All that's changed, and the change accelerates with each passing day. The image of America was far more typified 40 years ago by Cary Grant and Grace Kelly, not Lopez Lomong or Marion Jones. Marion Jones, of course, is the disgraced and soon-to-be imprisoned gold medalist who is perhaps the most famous American Olympic athlete. Soon America will have a new president. It may be a president who for the past 20 years was a member of a church that proclaimed its loyalty to Africa and a church that condemned America. Or on the other side, it may be a man who supported open borders and amnesty and who's made his own private effort to change American demographics with an adoption from Bangladesh. Of course, Obama and McCain have both reaffirmed their commitment to Israel as a Jewish state and to fight endless wars for Israel. But both McCain and Obama would never even acknowledge the fact that our people of European descent in both Europe and America have the fundamental right to survive and to have a government and a culture that reflects our own values, traditions, culture, and identity. The Chinese who run their own media and their own government would never put someone into power who was opposed to the rights of the Chinese to survive and to thrive. That goes without saying. And that's the difference between China and the European and American nations. Thank you for being with me and having the ability to think independently.